Today's video is sponsored by Drop and their Sennheiser PC37X headset. You can learn how to get $20 off by following the link in the description and at the end of the video. Welcome everyone to my guide for the Shadow title. It's a new season, and with that comes a new collections badge and seal, part of the second year of Destiny 2. Can you believe we're less than 2 months away from the start of year 3 already? That's pretty nuts. But before we get all hyped up for Shadowkeep, I'm going to go over how to fill out the entire Season of Opulence collections badge and how to unlock the Shadow title. I enjoyed unlocking this title a lot more than last season's, evidenced by the fact that I didn't even make a guide for Reckoner. Sorry about that, by the way, I'm just kind of scarred from Reckoning. I genuinely enjoy making these title guides, by the way, and although those of you who are hardcore out there probably already are well on your way to unlocking this, it's nice to be able to recap the entire season and make an all-in-one guide for pretty much everything related to the new content. I'll mention this a few times throughout the video, that all of the related guides for everything I'm mentioning are in the description below, so you can check out everything I'm going to talk about down there. Right now on the screen should be a table of contents if you need to skip around and find the stuff you're looking for. In a few moments, I'm going to briefly go over how the Chalice, Imperials, and runes work, so if you'd like to skip that intro stuff, feel free to do so. So traditionally, I like to start with the collections badge, since the badge itself is a prerequisite to completing the seal, and after I go over everything within it, then I'll move on to the tougher triumphs. Like with all the badges, you only need to unlock a full set of items for one character in order to get credit for completing it. And in the Season of Opulence badge, there are 31 total items you'll need to collect. 13 weapons, 4 from the raid, 8 from the menagerie, and 1 legendary quest weapon, 2 armor sets, 1 full set from the raid, and 1 full set from the menagerie. You'll also need 4 shaders, 2 emblems, and 2 cosmetics that are thankfully tied to triumphs. We'll start first with the menagerie since there's a ton to cover here. In order to begin acquiring loot from this new 6-player activity, you'll need a Chalice of Opulence. You can upgrade the Chalice of Opulence with a new currency called Imperials that comes from consumables, treasure map bounties, and most importantly, menagerie triumphs. If I can offer one piece of advice when starting out, it would be to unlock the perk Power and Efficiency 2 as soon as possible. This perk makes it so that you have a small chance to receive 500 Imperials every time you complete a playlist activity, aka Vanguard Strikes, Crucible matches, and Gambit matches. Unlocking Power and Efficiency 2, you also get access to the Wealth of the Emperor consumable from Werner and Benedict, which increases your chances to get those Imperials. Open the weekly chests on the Nessus barge, do the 4 bounties on each character, and upgrade your Chalice to unlock all of the rune compatibility perks, allowing you to access every type of rune and get all of the armor and weapons in the menagerie. Now here's the cool part. In Season of Opulence, you can craft exactly what you want with these runes using this menagerie loot table. This original design was created by Reddit user Windsor408, and all of the data in it was a collaborative effort by the community in the beginning of the season, and this is just my cleaned up version of it. For this table, I only included the stuff you actually need for the title. Check the description for a full loot table of all the loot you can get in the menagerie. You simply enter in the specific rune shown on top first, and then the second rune you enter is any rune of that specific color to the left. So for example, if you wanted to get the fixed odds machine gun, you'd first enter in a red rune of ambition, and then any blue rune. Now you'll probably notice by this point that the Chalice has 3 slots on it, and the 3rd slot is for determining what masterwork stat you want to roll on the weapon. This isn't included in the loot table because it actually tells you what masterwork stat which rune gives when you hover over them in the 3rd slot. This works the same way with armor, except with armor you can craft a piece with whatever stat type you want by entering in a specific blue rune in the 2nd slot. The armor can roll with either mobility, resilience, or recovery, and depending on which blue rune you enter, that's what you're going to get. The 3rd rune, like weapons, will decide the masterwork trait, whether the armor is masterwork for solar, arc, or void damage resistance. The badge requires you to get one of every unique menagerie weapon alongside a full set of menagerie armor. All of that stuff can be crafted within the normal match-made version of the menagerie, except for swords. Swords are exclusive to the heroic menagerie, which recommends you be a minimum of 750 power since the enemies go up to 770. It's very difficult and you'll need a pre-made fire team in order to beat it since there is no matchmaking. The sword cannot be crafted, instead it has a chance to drop when killing the final boss. And while you only need 1 sword for the badge, To get all 3, you'll actually have to be on that character, as the swords are class specific like they were in year 1. To my knowledge, there is no way to get traditional curated rolls within the Menagerie, but you can get a fully masterworked non-curated roll the first time you open a chest per week in the heroic version. It's only going to be the first time you open it on your account, by the way. It's not a per character thing. And that's how you craft the armor and weapons of the Menagerie. Upon completing your very first run of the normal activity, you'll get the emblem Hall of Delights, which is needed for the badge as well. Now, unlike in Black Armory, you'll actually need the raid gear for this badge. You'll have to collect a full set of shadow armor and the 4 raid weapons on one character. The 4 weapons being the Galron's right hand auto rifle, the Chalice Noblesse scout rifle, the Emperor's Courtesy shotgun, and the Bane of Sorrow light machine gun. Completing the raid for your first time will grant you the Crown of Sorrow emblem, which of course you'll also need for the badge. If you need a guide for the raid, I've actually got you covered this time. Check the description for a link to a full in-depth raid guide for Crown of Sorrow, with recommendations and easy to understand strategies and explanations for each encounter. The 4 legendary shaders included in this badge work like most legendary shaders, where they drop upon dismantling an item that they drop on. From my experience, all of these shaders can pretty much drop in the Menagerie and in the raid on weapons and armor. You kinda just have to get lucky with these, although they don't seem too rare. I was able to find all of them within the first week of the DLC. Shadow Guilt drops on pretty much everything. Cinder Chars seem to most commonly drop on curated raid weapons for me, things like Emperor's Courtesy and Galron's right hand, and Golden Empire and Gold Leaf were commonly found on armor sets in the Menagerie for me. They also appeared on some of the weapons as well, but that's just my experience and yours is gonna vary. Next up is the 2 cosmetic items. Thankfully, they are not tied to RNG at all. Instead, tied to specific triumphs, which is pretty much perfect. The Sparrow is tied to the triumph called Rolling Deep, which requires you to slot 200 runes in your chalice and collect the rewards from the final Menagerie chest. The fastest way to do this once you have a large stockpile of runes is to enter 3 runes at a time, provided you have unlocked all 3 slots. But even if you don't have a lot of runes to spend, you'll get this one over time just by playing. The normal Menagerie is a very fun activity, and even matchmaking, it doesn't take that long either. The Ghost Shell comes from the I'm Not Superstitious triumph, which asks you to complete every encounter in the Crown of Sorrow raid with no Guardian receiving the Witch's Curse debuff. For those not familiar, when you acquire the Witch's Blessing buff, you have 1 minute before you have to remove it, or else it turns into Witch's Curse. If this happens, your screen turns red and you'll die a few seconds later. For this triumph, everyone should be keeping a super close eye on their blessing timer and prioritizing switching their buff over pretty much anything else if the timer is about to run out. If a player is going to run out of Witch's Blessing before they can make it back to a vessel, that player can kill themselves in order to prevent them from getting the Witch's Curse. I obviously wouldn't recommend doing this unless you're at the very end of an encounter, but it is an option if someone is in trouble. Also, one thing I want to talk a little about is in Phase 2 mainly. In my raid guide, I said that you should transfer buffs by having 2 people essentially pass to 1 person, but a much easier method is when a player needs a buff, they stand in the Witch's Vessel circle and shoot it, and any buffed player in the entire map can shoot the vessel at the same time from anywhere, and it will give the player in the vessel a buff. This is really helpful for making sure everyone gets their necessary buffs after shield breaks without having to run across the entire map to help them. The nice thing about this triumph is it doesn't need to be completed in one run either. It's per encounter, so if no one gets the Witch's Curse in encounter 1, but they get it in encounter 2, the little box in the triumph will be checked off for the first encounter, meaning you don't actually have to repeat that without anyone getting Witch's Curse again. If everyone knows what they're doing and is comfortable with the mechanics, you'll get this one naturally. The very last thing you need to do in your collections is get the Rose Legendary Hand Cannon. This comes from one of the very first steps from the LUMINA exotic quest line. To begin the quest, head to the salt mines in the EDZ and take the teleporter up to the campsite where you found Thorn. There's a chest at the back of the camp, and opening it will give you a system positioning device. This is a key for a chest that could be in one of like 8 locations. And in the description, I have a guide for every location of where the chest can spawn, and I believe once you pick up the chest, you just have to do one more step to get the rose. I don't really know why this weapon was included, but at least you can pull it out of collections again and add shaders, mods, or a masterwork to it. So that is how you get everything included in the Season of Opulence badge. Once completed, you can claim the Triumph mint in box, and now we can move on to the rest of the seal. There are 23 total Triumphs needed to complete the seal. Some are a lot easier than others, and I'll link those all in the description, so if you have any trouble with anything, you can check out guides for them below. Treasure Hunt is for completing 16 weekly bounties from Warner 99. That's a pretty easy one. You can almost knock out this Triumph in a single day if you had 3 characters, but at minimum it's going to take you 2 weeks. Like Clockwork is for completing a run through the Menagerie without running out of time in any encounter. So after you complete the beginning lamplighting sequence, you must kill all bosses and complete all objectives before the timer runs out in each encounter. Completing an encounter successfully will fill up your bar to 50%, meaning to complete this Triumph, you only have to beat 2 encounters without running out of time. The boss encounter has no time limit, so as long as you can make it there without failing, you're golden. Imperial Finery is exactly what it says, to complete a run through the Menagerie in a complete set of opulent gear. This opulent gear is acquired through the chest at the end of the Menagerie, so if you've acquired a full set, just equip it and run the activity. Flair for Drama, Prized Fighter, and Sweet and Shy are 3 Triumphs that you'll get for defeating the 3 weekly bosses in the Menagerie. The activity is on a 3-week rotation, and so that means these 3 bosses will be featured 1 week at a time. First up is Hosapako, the Vex Minotaur boss. To defeat him, simply kill Vex Harpies and stand in the Vex-like effects that spawn when they die. Standing in this aura will allow you to break the boss's shield, and from here, you can do damage, and just make sure to dodge the incoming walls or else you'll get insta-zapped. You can block the walls by standing in a Titan bubble, guarding with a banner shield, or blocking with a sword. Arunak is the week 2 boss, a giant ogre with minions of Cursed Thrall. Killing the Cursed Thrall drop orbs that you can pick up and throw at the boss's shield to break it, and the rest should be pretty easy. Pagori is the week 3 boss, the giant Vex Hydra. This boss will hide in a cage until you capture Vex plates around the arena to release him. To reach the first damage phase, capture the plate in front of the rally flag on the ground. To reach the second damage phase, capture the Vex plates on the left and the right sides of the room. Whichever plate you capture last will lure the boss to your side. And to reach the third damage phase, capture all 3 plates I just mentioned, middle, right, and left, to bring out the boss once more. This should be enough to kill him, if not, just repeat the process again. The following Triumphs are for completing specific encounters with time left on the clock. The Hunted, which requires capturing the plates and killing all the giant knight bosses. Tethers and Well of Radiances are great for this, by the way. The Arcborn, which requires stacking up a soul buff to ×3, dunking it in the havens, and then killing the ogre and wizard bosses that spawn in. The Riposte, which requires defeating Hive Knights to claim their sword, and then killing shielded knights and killing the shielded ogre bosses. Using Titan Bubbles and Well of Radiances are great for making sure you don't die when trying to take down the ogre bosses with the sword. And the last encounter is the Crystals, which requires destroying harpies to get craniums and using them to destroy all the crystals in the arena and defeating all 3 bosses. Bottom Tree Sentinel with Doomfangs and Tether are really clutch in the crystals encounter, and Well of Radiances are helpful too. Completing these 4 encounters without running out of time will get you these 4 specific Triumphs. Then we have 2 more Triumphs that can be done in normal Menagerie. The first is called Going the Distance, which requires all 6 players to complete all 3 laps in the Gauntlet encounter without anyone dying. Previously, you could just fire grenade launchers across the finish line to count as players, but there was a change to this recently, so I'm not sure it works anymore. There's not really any advice I could give you here, just make sure to not get killed by the fire and try and stay in a single file line to not bunce anyone out of the way. The second Triumph is called Safe Haven, which requires you to defeat the ogre bosses within the Mockery encounter with all 3 havens preserved. The best strategy for this is to have a Well of Radiance on the left and right sides, guarding both those havens, and have 3 teams of 2 players, each team taking a haven. The middle haven is the easiest to defend and can actually be done solo. Jotun makes it very easy to kill the wizards here, and when you bring an orb back to the haven, you can just sit inside it until it's getting close to exploding, and then dunk the orb to fill it back up. Phoenix Protocol is pretty good to have in these wells since you're mostly killing ads, and if you can keep the havens alive long enough, you just have to melt the 2 ogre bosses before the havens expire to get this Triumph. Then there are 3 heroic Triumphs. Uncontrolled Rage, Break a Leg, and Lambs to the Slaughter, which require you to complete all 3 Heroic Menagerie bosses with no fire team member dying at all during the boss fight. So it doesn't matter what happens in the rest of the activity, it's just that no one can die while fighting these bosses. I've got a strategy that you can use to help you flawless every one of the bosses, just check the description to see those videos. Then we have a secret triumph called Lost in the Kingdom of Sorrow, which is earned by looting the chest after the jumping puzzle in the Crown of Sorrow raid 5 times. Nothing too fancy for that one. Now, the Crown of Ease triumph is rewarded for completing the flawless version of the Crown of Sorrow raid. I was going to talk a lot about this in this video, but for the sake of this video not being an hour long, I thought it would be better to have a separate video dedicated to the flawless raid, which I'll have uploaded soon to help you guys out. The 3 remaining triumphs are Limited Blessings, Total Victory, and With Both Hands, which are 3 challenges done inside the Crown of Sorrow raid. These are the 3 easiest challenges in pretty much any raid in Destiny 2, and I'll go over each of them real quick, but if you want to see a full in-depth explanation that will answer any questions you have, you can find links to those in the description. The Limited Blessing challenge requires you to complete the first encounter with a maximum of 2 blessed players. If at any time your team has more than 2 blessed players, you will fail. You can set up your teams like normal and just have the 2 players in the middle team stay out of the witch's vessel for the entire fight. This means they will need help killing their crystal in the middle, so just be aware of that. The Total Victory challenge requires you to kill the Galron Deception in Phase 1 by breaking his shield 5 times during the damage phase. The easiest way to pull this off is by having one player be the permanent blessed player and sitting back far enough from the boss so that they don't lose their buff when his shield is broken. When you begin damage phase, the remaining 5 players will all rush in and lose their buff, breaking his shield. The one permanent blessed player will then shoot Anarchy at the boss, while a non-blessed player melees the boss for another shield break. Having one blessed person using Anarchy means they won't lose their buff and can still help break the shield, because Anarchy's grenades counts as a blessed player. If you can pace your damage across 5 shield breaks, and make sure to have the blessed player remove his buff on the final one, that's challenge completed. Just a quick note, this challenge has to be done with exactly 5 shield breaks, no less, no more. The With Both Hands challenge takes place during Phase 2, and the challenge itself only pertains to the damage phase portion of this encounter. When all of the teams have shot their own Galron, and you figured out which zone has the real boss, head over there and set up your team like this. Whichever team's side the boss is on, that team will be number 1. Then you assign another team to be number 2 and another team to be number 3. On each team, you should establish who is shooting the left hand and who is shooting the right hand before you begin the encounter. And once you've begun the damage phase, Team 1's going to go first, having one member shoot left and one member shoot the right hand. Then Team 2 goes, doing exactly the same thing, one person per hand. And finally, Team 3 goes, repeating that as well. You can only have one person shoot each hand during a damage phase, so no one can help you when it's your turn. If you kill the boss before having every team shoot hands, it will still count. You can do it in less than 3 cycles if you manage to kill him quicker though. And that's everything you need to know about how to unlock the Shadow title in Season of Opulence. Overall, I'd say this seal is one of the better designed ones, with the only real issue being the sword. Not being able to craft the sword means you might not get it in 10 runs, you might not get it in 20 runs, maybe not even in 30. And that wouldn't be so bad if Heroic Menagerie wasn't such a time-consuming and challenging activity to set up. Shadow is definitely more of a team-oriented seal, where about half of it or more requires you to play in a pre-made group and complete tough challenges, which I much prefer over having to chase cosmetics in the Dreaming City for 9 months. At first, it was pretty tough going through and grinding these Menagerie triumphs under light, but that was part of the fun. I loved the challenge it offered early in the DLC and throughout this season, and personally, I thought the title did a pretty good job of putting an emphasis on triumph hunting, something I already really enjoyed. Hopefully this answers all your questions surrounding Season 7, and with that, I'll see you guys soon. This video was sponsored by Drop, formerly Mass Drop, and the Sennheiser PC37X. Drop was nice enough to send me this headset, and after using it in some very long gaming sessions over the last week, there's some really great features I wanted to highlight. One of the things I like most about this headset is its open back design, and if you aren't familiar with open back headphones, Basically, they allow air to pass through the ear cups to the speaker. With a closed back, you tend to get this pressure building up, and it can really negatively impact your sound a lot of the time, and you can notice echoing because of this. But with open backs like the PC37X, it really eliminates this to give you a much more clear and natural sound, which is extremely important when playing something like a Destiny raid, when communication and in-game sounds are super vital. The headset also has an adjustable wheel to allow you to lower and raise the volume, which is right on the side of the headphones, and you can raise and lower the mic arm to toggle mute. I love that there's not a ton of buttons and it's all a very simple and clean design, and a comfortable one as well because of the padding, which reduces sweating and makes wearing them for long hours super easy. So if you're looking to upgrade or just want to check out the headset, you can visit the link in the description for $20 off. That's dro.ps/ninjapups-PC37X. Again, you can get $20 off the Massdrop Cross Sennheiser PC37X through the link in the description. Thank you, Drop, for the sponsorship and for the awesome addition to my Sennheiser collection.